Okay. All right, so we do a call to order. And go ahead. I guess we'll go into the roll call.
Okay. Mr. Straight,
Present.
Mr. Fredine,
Present.
Mr. Cowling,
Present.
Mr. Arnold,
Here.
Mr. McCann. Okay, Mr. Soboleski,
Present.
Mr. Vanoy,
Present.
Mr. Fulmer,
Present.
Mr. Kunder,
We see you.
we see you.
If you called my name, it's very broken up. Larry Kunder's here.
Okay, Mr. Hamill,
Present.
Mr. Dial, and Mr. Spinelli.
Here.
You have a quorum. Now for staff, Mr. Knopfinger
Present.
and Mr. Campbell.
Present.
And staff is present. Oh, and is there anyone else that has logged on that I have not called?
This is Tyler Gray with Mechanical Construction and Consulting, just calling to listen in.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's get approval of the agenda. Has everyone got to review it?
Yes. I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good. We're cruising along. Okay, approval of the minutes. Has everyone got a chance to review them?
This is Craig. I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
Can I get a second?
Mr. Hamill seconds.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, excellent. Okay, new business. AO 2021088. Tana, what are we looking at as far as, is this just open as far as the discussion goes, or do we need to actually work through any of this on the licensing requirements?
Actually, that should be Ross, who should be answering that question.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, this is Ross Singer, acting building official. I can give kind of a general overview of where we're at since this has drug on for such an extended period of time. Some of us might have lost track. But basically when AO 2021-88S was passed, I guess a year ago, the assembly took it upon themselves to change licensing requirements without any input from staff or the building board. And in doing so, they kind of opened the door to basically allow anybody to do electrical work. And kind of knocked us substantially out of compliance with the state of Alaska requirements. And so, long story short, I set about trying to draft language to correct the issue. And as I got into it, I realized that we basically needed to completely rewrite section 2310-105.1 in order to just simplify it, make it much more clear for everyone to understand. And I worked with the assembly attorney, Dean Gates, on putting this language together that's now in this ordinance. It's so new, it doesn't even have a number yet. But the proposed language is what was sent out to everybody on the board, and hopefully people have had a chance to read through it, review it. And this language is, I basically, a lot of this language I extracted verbatim from the state requirement. So if it reads kind of goofy, that's because that's the way it reads in the state requirements. But where the state requirements were really gray on some areas, we did narrow it down so that it's understandable and enforceable. So maybe at this point, open it up to see if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns on any of this language.
Hi, Larry Cutter, got a couple of questions. I was wondering, is it defined? I was reading through 2310-105-1 3B, alterations of work on that property. Is it defined, alterations, what that actually means? Because when you, we haven't got to even to the electrical, but is it defined in plain English what alterations and the extent of that is?
Oh, goodness, I mean, like the existing building code, the IEBC existing building code speaks extensively to alterations.
Okay. And was it always in there? I'm sorry, I'm behind, but was it always in there that commercial structures could be worked on by non-licensed?
Within limitation, they can do maintenance and repair work.
Ross, the only thing that I'm, this is Bryce, the only thing that I'm seeing on here is just what they're repealing. Where is the language that they're replacing?
That is not shown in here. Actually, and the reason we probably didn't bother doing it was because it was just wrong, so we just didn't really want to waste time like reviewing what we get rid of.
The thing I have that I'm looking at, it says language to be repealed. Then there's an AO that I'm assuming is the language that would place that. So I don't see you have it there, but it was in the package. That was in the package.
So
that's the old one.
yeah, so originally the assembly thought that they were only going to, that they could fix the mistake they made just by doing a simple repeal of the new language they added. But when we got to looking at it, we realized that that wasn't the case, that we actually really needed to work this thing over and clarify it. So, and the fact too that this ordinance doesn't have a number yet. So I don't think that the Assembly's official ordinance language has all been put together. Other than, this is good, the proposed language for 2310-105 is good. The language surrounding introducing the ordinance and saying what the ordinance does may not be complete.
Mr. Chair.
I have Bryce has a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ross, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, so this looks like it's just going to be repealing the new language that they put in that we took exception to, and then it's going to, are they planning on it defaulting back to the old language until they can put new language and get that reenacted? Or are they just saying, here's the draft that we're letting you know we're going to repeal it, and we'll give you the rest of the language later for you to comment on?
So we are going to repeal all of 2310-105.1 paragraphs like A, B, C, D. I think they go all the way up to H, and replace it with the language here. Can you get into Municode and pull that up? Yes. We can go ahead and show you the current language that's going to get repealed. Speedy Pass computer system. Go reference. Yeah, go media code. Click online hosted. Scroll down to 23 on the left. Up a little bit. There you go. 10.
310.
Hey, you gotta go back to want to go to 5.1, 10, 105.1.
105.1. Okay,
We don't have a screen share going on.
yeah, I got a screen share. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah,
There you go.
So basically paragraphs A, B, go ahead and slowly scrolling down for them. A, B, C, and D, E, F, G, H, I, and J are all getting replaced. We're incorporating all the requirements into this new revised simplified version. And maybe scroll back up so they can make the first parts of it.
So Ross, does the repeal of this wait until we have this draft put together, or until you have the draft put together, or is it repeal immediate to default back?
Well, what's going on at this point is this is the Assembly's language basically at this point that they're requesting that the building board bless. And if the building board is good with this language, it will completely repeal the existing language that we just showed you.
Sorry. Daniel, do you have your hand raised?
I do, thanks. I have a question regarding the effect of this new ordinance. So as I read it, the existing language that's to be repealed allows anyone to act as a general contractor within certain limits. And then all work has to be performed by licensed subcontractors. The new language requires the general contractor to do that. So an unlicensed person cannot act as a general contractor. Is that correct?
I didn't get that.
Point of privilege, can everybody who's not speaking mute their mic?
Daniel Fulmer, can you please repeat?
Yeah, sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. So as I read this, the existing ordinance allows anyone to act as a general contractor, an unlicensed person to act as a general contractor within certain limits. And then all the work that's being performed must be executed by licensed individuals, licensed subcontractors. But the new language is way more stringent because it requires anyone acting as a general contractor to be licensed. So under the new ordinance, no unlicensed person can act as a general contractor. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. So the new version, we broke it down in 3 parts. Like part A is your general and specialty contractor. And then there's a list of exceptions, A, B, and C, where a person can act as a general contractor. And then part B is your electrical contractor, electrical administrator, and certificate of fitness required. And part C is your mechanical contractor, administrators, and certificate of fitness and qualification required. And the reason we split them out like that is because the requirements are different to a certain degree depending on the discipline.
Okay, so help me interpret provision A2, which reads, the requirement to be licensed applies regardless of whether the work is exempt from the requirement for a permit.
Yeah, so that just means a permit's not required for all types of work. However, per state contracting laws, there are requirements that a contractor perform the work regardless of whether a permit's required for it. That's the only purpose of that statement.
Okay, thank you.
And then so like that first exception under number 3, a person working on an existing structure on that person's own property, whether occupied by the person or not, and a person working on a person's own existing residence, whether owned by the person or not. That says right there that if you own a commercial building or a residential building, an existing building, you can act as a contractor on that building. And there's no limit. You can own 100 buildings. You can act on it as a contractor on all of them. And then part B allows that owner or even a tenant to use their own employees to do maintenance, repair, and alteration work. And those 2 exceptions came right from the state of Alaska exceptions to contractor required. And then the third exception is the one that allows a person to build their own building. And you're limited as to like 1 building every 2 years. And so all 3 of those exceptions come from state law.
So Ross, just so I am tracking, we're cleaning up where these 3 exceptions got lumped into electrical and mechanical.
Yeah, exactly. The problem that the assembly created actually had to do with electrical and mechanical work.
Okay.
But I figure while we're at it, we might as well just clean this whole thing up, because even our existing language wasn't very good. It was hard to understand, hard to interpret, hard to apply.
Okay, so do we need to put this up for discussion? Has everyone had time to review?
If you like, I can go through each one of these, like general contractor, electrical contractor, mechanical contractor, because there's a discrepancy here that I need to point out to the board.
Okay. Craig, you have a question?
Oh, I think Ross is going to get to it. To me, the big thing was the electrical looked like it kind of fell through the cracks there. So I'll let Ross address how electrical is being taken care
of. Okay.
And figure out how to put my hand up here.
So we go down to B, to electrical, and the electrical contractor differs substantially from a general contractor with this requirement to have an administrator. And so we really wanted to clarify the importance of the requirement to have the administrator. And then the big difference is performing electrical work requires a certificate of fitness for the individual performing the work. And so we split that out, and like number 1, electrical work shall be performed by an electrical contractor. An electrical contractor shall employ or be an electrical administrator. A person who performs electrical work regulated by the NEC shall possess a certificate of fitness. And then we get down to the exceptions, and this is right out of state law. Maintenance and repair work is exempt from all this. And the state law, I believe, does clarify what constitutes maintenance and repair work. And then exception B, electrical installation on a detached single-family dwelling that is owned and occupied by the installer or a member of the installer's immediate family and not intended for sale at the time. That's mostly follows exactly the language out of state law. Then when we get down, and I'll point out the difference here after I go through mechanical contractor. And mechanical contractor obviously includes plumbing. So mechanical contractor is similar to electrical work in the sense that it requires that administrator, and it requires, plumbing work requires a certificate of fitness. And then the MOA has something this is beyond state law, this requirement for certificate of qualification. And so we go down, number 1, mechanical work, including plumbing, shall be performed by a mechanical contractor. The mechanical contractor shall be or employ a mechanical administrator. A person who performs plumbing or gas piping work regulated by the UPC shall possess a certificate of fitness issued by the state. A person who labors in the capacity of a plumber, gas fitter, or sheet metal journeyman shall possess a valid journeyman certificate of qualification issued by the municipality. And we just wanted to point out that issuance of a journeyman certificate of qualification requires one demonstrate knowledge by passing an exam. A person who labors as a plumber or gas fitter trainee shall possess a valid trainee certificate of fitness issued by the state and a certificate of qualification issued by the municipality. I think you can see at this point why I broke these out, right? I mean, the nuances to this are a little over the top. A person who labors as a sheet metal trainee shall possess a valid trainee certificate of qualification issued by the MOA. And then we got this requirement: trainees shall work under the supervision of a journeyman, and there should be not more than 2 trainees per journeyman. Exceptions to subsection C, and so we got the standard exception for mechanical and plumbing maintenance and repair work that can basically be performed by an owner or an owner's employees. And then B, mechanical or plumbing installation on a detached 1 or 2 family residence that is owned and occupied by the installer or member of the installer's immediate family and not intended for sale at the time of making installation. So that language is pretty much out of the state, but the big disconnect is that for electrical work, you can only work on a single family home. And for plumbing and mechanical work, you can do a 1 or 2 family home. You can do a duplex. And then so the question becomes, and I'm following state law at this point. So the municipality is not operated that way. Historically, the municipality has allowed electrical work on a duplex. And the state of Alaska knows that that's not in accordance with their requirements, but they've never really raised the point. Interestingly enough.
Has anyone done it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Our inspectors are, in fact, Victor's not here, but one of their concerns was like, oh, you guys are tightening up the requirements because now you're only going to let the homeowner wire a single family home. You're not going to let a homeowner do a duplex. And that's a little bit confusing in the sense that this guy who's building this duplex can do the plumbing and mechanical work, but he can't do the electrical work. And so it's kind of like the questions is, do we go with it as written? Do we tighten up the plumbing and mechanical and only let them work on a single family home? Or do we loosen up the electrical and let the electrical do single families and duplexes, even though that's not 100% in alignment with state law? Andre's got his hand up.
I guess my first question, Ross, is on electrical, number 3. Did I hear you right where you said that number 3 is above the requirements that the state requires?
No, it's in line with it.
Okay, so which part were you saying was above state requirements? Or did I mishear that? And there's no part that
I believe the sheet metal individual qualification cards, the state doesn't have and we have.
we proctor the examinations and the training for those.
Okay, and that was basically what I was getting at was if we're requiring something that's above the state, is it readily accessible? Like,
I would say it is. I mean, you can explain your
Absolutely.
certification process.
I mean, and those examinations are primarily developed on our local amendments, which is, stuff that information that was developed in the early 2000. And we just kind of kept on updating that with the code cycles, and we provide that educational information for anyone that has the hours of experience, and then basically qualifies them to take the examination. And then at that point, we issue a qualification card if it was successful.
and then my second question down in C under mechanical electrical, I'm just looking at all of these items compared to, and I don't know if I'm comparing it to the right thing, but the document provided of what was going to be repealed. I didn't see all of these requirements that you just went through, 1 through 8. And I guess my only concern is I hear it constantly from electrical and mechanical, plumbing, mechanical subs, is that they can't find anyone to work. And so I guess my question is, are we raising the bar too high that we won't be able to get people into those jobs to start learning and coming through? Or has it changed?
I don't, it hasn't changed much. The only thing, and that's not even really considered a change. That's been a set standard for many decades.
Yeah, it's probably been this way for at least 3 decades.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at the old piece of paper, what's being repealed in this one,
Sure.
It's hard to tell.
It's hard to do a direct comparison because I stuck it all in the blender and rearranged it into a more logical fashion. It was kind of just randomly laid out before.
The new format does look right. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't adding a bunch of requirements to an already stressful situation.
No, I did not add anything new that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's a very good question you're asking, because it's not only just in the construction industry that everyone's struggling to attract that certain class for these types of trades. But yeah, those standards have been in place, and so far all the municipal and state contractors have been following that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So through the chair, Ross, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, so this draft amendment that they've repealed it and put all these in here, but the thing that's throwing me was one of the main reasons that we are repealing this was that they were allowing people to work on their own commercial property and not have licensed mechanical or electrical contractors working on it, but that language is still in this other document. Can you explain, I guess, elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I can explain that. So what the assembly basically did was they took these exceptions that I have up here in paragraph A for general contractors, and they applied these broad exceptions for general contractors to everything, to electrical and mechanical contractors, and totally lost sight of the requirement for the certificate of fitness to actually perform the work.
So are we repealing that or are we leaving that in? I guess that's what I'm trying to understand how. I understand that you're saying that they need a fitness card to provide it, but weren't we supposed to be removing this language altogether from the ordinance?
Well, my response to that would be, one basically has to read this proposed new 105 and become comfortable with what it's saying.
So if I'm looking at the document that is the draft 2023, it's just got XXX, and I don't know, this is just the repeal and reenactment. I'm looking at this with all the line items from the assembly. And on line 15, we basically go into, which is bulleted number 3, exceptions to the subsection A, and then you go down to B, which is on line 20, and it says an owner or tenant of commercial property who uses this owner's or tenant's own employees to do maintenance, repair, and alteration work on that property. So are they saying that they're allowing those people to do the work without being a licensed mechanical or electrical contractor on a commercial property?
So are you reading under paragraph A, exception B?
I think that's part of the confusion is we've got two different documents and I'm trying to figure out the one that I'm assuming that the assembly is going to be putting forth is the draft document that was sent out to us, and I'm looking at that. Then they've got this document that you pulled up on the website. We did get that language, but I'm trying to figure out the difference between the two documents, number one.
For one thing, if you're trying to compare this new ordinance with the current language on the website, set aside an hour of time for yourself.
They don't match.
Yeah, they don't match, and it's gonna be a real brain twister to reconcile them.
Okay, but I guess backing up, we did discuss at a meeting prior to this about having an owner or tenant on a commercial property using their own staff, which could be anybody, it could be an admin person to do mechanical or electrical work. And I believe the board took exception to that, and I see that that is still allowable under what is being proposed.
Well, no, that's only allowed under the general or specialty contractor. That's not allowed under the electrical or mechanical contractor.
Through the chair. Larry
Yeah,
Kunder.
Larry.
B4 exception A says that they are allowed to perform on property or a tenant commercial property as of employee work duties with respect to property. So it does still say, and that was one of my concerns in the original was, it's been my feelings, if you want to do something on your own place, that's one thing, but now acting and not have an administrator or electrician doing the work on a commercial structure. Am I reading that wrong?
That's only electrical maintenance and repair work, which is not regulated.
To the chair, how are they going to designate to the chair, Don McCann? How are they going to designate? How are they going to designate what is a repair when you put in a new construction?
So this language comes from state law, and I believe the state regulations somewhat clarify what is considered to be maintenance and repair work.
And where is that?
Some language
Where's the language for that?
in the Anchorage Administrative Code that breaks that down in depth when what is considered new work or an alteration or what falls under maintenance.
That is Yaris Dofa who has attended the meeting.
Basically, if you're running new wire, you're doing new work. You're doing alteration work or new work if you're pulling new wire. If you're changing out a receptacle or a light fixture, you're doing maintenance or repair work.
Who's that directed to?
Just addressing the question on maintenance and repair work.
Okay, so is that cleared everything up for everyone that had questions? Bryce, Larry?
Yeah, I think I see what Ross was talking about now. You're basically breaking each of these sections by trade. So you've got the general contracting and then the exceptions for that, electrical, and then the exceptions for that, mechanical exceptions for that.
Yeah, I think that's where the confusion came in, is that the general contractor policies are so significantly different licensing wise. Does anyone else have any discussion on this?
This is Eric through the chair.
Okay. Go ahead.
So what I'm gathering is that makes perfect sense now with the general contractor. They have a different threshold. You can have unlicensed people do sheetrock and that type of thing. The electrical requirements, mechanical are still in place for that type of work. The difference left to deal with is that the mechanical allows you to do the plumbing and HVAC work in a duplex, and electrical only allows a single, or was it vice versa?
That's correct. Yeah, if you look at exception B under the electrical work, it's only a single family dwelling.
Now, what does the state read on that for mechanical and electrical?
So here's the challenging part about the state on electrical. I believe the state reads electrical installation on a residence. And so back in the 70s, that got challenged and it went to the Supreme Court. And basically, the case was a guy was building an apartment building in Juneau, and the owner wanted to wire this apartment building. And the regulation said residence, and he said, well, this is a residence, so I should get a wiring. And the Supreme Court came back and ruled that they did not believe that that was the intent, even though the regulation read really broad. The intent of that broad regulation was that it really meant a residence was a residence that either you or that your family members are going to live in. So the Supreme Court ruling really narrowed it down to a single residence. So now we're not just interpreting state regs, but we got to mix in court law.
So that seems like that kind of fixes it for electrical, but nothing's happened like that for mechanical, so that's why they're still at a duplex. Is that correct?
Department of Labor does.
I guess this is Andre. I wanted to add that the state of Alaska doesn't actually have a building code for triplex, duplex, or single family homes. They draw the line at fourplex, and then they regulate fourplexes under the IBC because the state does not adopt the IRC.
So through the chair, I think Andre's referring to the state fire marshal's office, which enforces the fire code and the IBC and the IMC. This is the electrical code and the plumbing code are regulated by the Department of Labor, and they have different thresholds for where the regulation begins and applies.
So where did mechanical come up with duplex to draw their line?
That's a really good question, but the easy part to that answer is that the state regs just explicitly say, they either say duplex or two family, so it's clear, exactly what they're referring to.
But it's not worded that way in the electrical, and we're going back to the Supreme Court decision to bring that back to a single family for electrical.
Correct.
Sounds like we're kind of in a pickle on that, and we're just kind of stuck with it. Do we have any flexibility? If we write something else, are we just setting it up for another Supreme Court issue or unenforceable?
I guess this is Andre. I have a question for staff. I believe we're allowed to be more restrictive than the state, correct?
Correct, more restrictive, not less restrictive, in theory. I can cite practical examples where that's not the case, but just like this example, like we've been allowing duplexes, right? And the state's never called us out on that.
Have you been allowing it for electrical as well?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Well. But if we go ahead and codify that in this document, then we're going against the ruling of the Supreme Court. Or would that make a new law that would be enforceable, that would be clear, and it wouldn't be a Supreme Court issue?
You know, through the chair, I mean, that's something that we could actually put back on the assembly attorney. You know, the board could make a recommendation of, I'm just throwing this out there, the board could make a recommendation that we believe that the electrical exception should be changed to allow duplexes, pending concurrence of the assembly attorney.
That seems like, if that's what you're enforcing anyway, it just seems like we should put the language right with that. Okay, so that puts that to bed. The other question I have is, I don't see any criteria for the electrical apprenticeship training, or what the requirements are to be considered an apprentice.
That's not included because the municipality doesn't have anything special other than what the state requires.
Okay.
The mechanical apprentices have to register with the municipality as well.
Yeah, so there are, as you can see under the mechanical portion, there are some extra provisions that apply to trainees and journeymen in the MOA that the state doesn't require.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
through the chair, Ross, wasn't prior to this, I guess this assembly ordinance passed, that you guys were doing up to triplex?
So how the assembly, through the chair, the mistake the assembly made was they basically took these broad exceptions for general contractor and applied them across the board to mechanical and electrical contractors.
Understood, but what were you guys enforcing, I guess, prior to this one that's getting repealed?
I didn't quite hear that.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sure, I said prior to the ordinance that was enacted that we're repealing now, were you guys inspecting or allowing up to a duplex or triplex, or what were you like allowing for?
The threshold was duplex.
Okay. Then I concur with Eric's, what he was saying about seeing if we could make a motion, or I should say a recommendation to pass it on to the assembly's attorney to do a duplex as well for electrical.
Bryce, I just want to confirm, you said that you were looking at potentially bringing this exemption up to triplex?
No, I remembered from a previous meeting, and I think I misremembered it sounds like, because they were enforcing up to a duplex, and I thought there was conversation that we could go up to a triplex, but I think it was probably something I misunderstood. And so that's the only thing I was trying to clarify with Ross.
From my understanding, the triplex to fourplex is a line in the sand for electrical of where it goes from residential wireman can run the job to a commercial journeyman has to run the job.
Got it.
Yeah, so through the chair, if we change the threshold to triplex, we would be clearly out of alignment with the state's requirements.
So do we need to put it to a vote? As far as if we recommend that we make the change, we make the recommendation to the assembly, they make the change to allow the residential duplex on electrical?
One option would be, through the chair here, one option would be that you could recommend that the assembly adopt the ordinance as written with the following recommended change.
Does anyone have any input on making the change to the electrical to match the mechanicals?
This is Andre. I kind of disagree with that. I don't think we should ask the assembly attorney if we should go ahead and violate state law, because I'm pretty sure the answer will be no, and it'd be a waste of time. So I would recommend approval as written.
The question I've got through the chair for Ross is, so there is a state law that only says that it is a single family for electrical. That's not just the case outcome that happened. There is a law in the books that states that it's only single family electrical can work on. Is that correct?
Through the chair, no, unfortunately, the state law reads, I believe it reads residence. And that's what ended up resulting in a case going to the Supreme Court. And then, so now the state relies on that case law in order to clarify the threshold.
Okay, got it.
So then, through the chair, we would just leave the plumbing as is, that it's for up to a duplex? Is that what I understand here?
I think that's for Ross, but I think that's kind of how it's leaning, Don.
So then a general contractor can do up to a duplex, not a triplex.
No, a mechanical contractor.
The
A
mechanical
mechanical-
contractor is the only limited there.
So where we're at is that's where we change to have an administrator involved?
No, so that exception would allow an owner to plumb his own duplex. It wouldn't be open to any general contractors just couldn't start plumbing duplexes under this. I know you aren't.
Well, then what was it before? What was it before this?
That through the chair, that's no change. In the past, it was duplex.
Now, are we talking the state or the municipality?
Through the chair, these will be municipal regulations.
Okay.
Through the chair, Larry here. I guess I'm confused on one thing. I hear general contractors can't do it. These exceptions are not for general contractors. It's for the property owners or tenants to act as a contractor on their own property. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it depends on which exception you're talking about. The exceptions for general contractors are a little bit different than the exceptions for mechanical and electrical work.
Okay, so I think that where we're at, are we in agreement that we can submit this and request it be approved as is? I feel like it's very clear defined, and I agree with Andre that if we try to move around state law, we're just gonna get slammed, you know?
I
Through
agree.
this is Eric, through the chair to the municipality. Is it causing any grief for you guys to just go ahead and allow the duplexes?
Through the chair for electrical work, or?
Yes, how that it's written as only a single family home and you're allowing duplexes. Is that causing any issues?
Well, if this were to go through, then we would probably send out a clarification to the industry that they're now limited, you know. I guess it's not really the industry we'd have to let them know. It's just that I'm sure we don't see a lot of these, but occasionally we come across you know, a home builder building a duplex that wants to wire it themselves. So that really wouldn't impact a lot of people when you really start thinking about it. Yeah. We really don't see a whole lot of owner builders.
Through the chair, so when the assembly member explained the background history of this particular ordinance, I still think it meets the intent of what he was wanting to do, which they had a person that had a second property that they wanted to upgrade, and he did the majority of the work, and the municipality worked with them to get that enacted. And I think that because it's broken down in the general contracting, electrical contracting, and mechanical contracting, I think it seems to me like this has been thought out.
I agree with Bryce. I feel like this is laid out well to explain to someone that came in as an owner builder. Okay, do we need to put it up to a vote?
Yes. To the
I
chair.
move to call the question.
Okay. Can I get a second?
Second.
Who was the first one? I did not hear you clearly.
It was Bryce.
Thank you.
All right, what do we need to do next?
You can do all in favor or
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
So we got
Aye.
2 opposed.
who opposed?
I did,
Eric.
Don McCann.
And Eric,
Thank you.
Okay. So does this need to be a unanimous, or do we have majority?
Just majority of the chair. And was the motion to recommend adoption is written?
Yes.
Okay.
You did make the motion, Ross?
Oh, I don't make motions, I'm staff. I just wanted the motion clarified because I don't think I actually heard it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's actually said it, but
Maybe we need to take a step back and have someone make a motion and then vote on that motion.
Well, to the chair, are we going to accept what is proposed here for the change? Is that what we're voting on? Yes.
really we're not. We're voting on what the document is, but really it's more of a clarification of the existing state law that has been enforced. Is how I understand it. We're not actually changing anything. We're just enforcing, and we're being put in the position to have to do it because of the change that Assembly made that took the clarification from residential to commercial away for the MEP standards.
So this is Craig. I'm also confused and I didn't vote on the last one because I also was unclear about what the motion was because you were talking about duplexes and whether we should go contrary to what the Supreme Court was. And I may have lost consciousness there for a little bit and then the motion came up. So I concur. Can we get a clear motion? Was this to approve the ordinance as proposed? Was that what the motion was? Or was it do the duplex and be contrary to state Supreme Court and the ordinance? I just need clarification on that.
The current motion that we voted on was for to accept it as written.
As originally submitted by Ross. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Then my
So
late
we'll-
vote would be yay.
All right, well, we have the vote, so, but we still aren't lost on the idea of, oh, Larry, I'm gonna mute you. We still aren't lost on the idea of putting the motion ahead, correct? As far as to add the exemption, I feel like the exemption puts us, it exposes us since there's a state law that's literally in the books about it. That's where I feel like how it's enforced is upon us. That's the municipality's enforcement. So us having it written in as a single family for the electrical covers us every which way as far as the board goes of what we put out in front, and it matches up with state law.
So this is Craig. I would recommend that if somebody wants to make duplexes acceptable for electrical, that they make a motion to amend that. And really, we probably should have done that before we just voted on the whole thing. And then just let us do a vote as a group, because I don't think the majority would be in favor of being with the duplexes. But if we need to get through forward by doing a motion, and then we can discuss and vote so we can keep moving.
You making a motion, Craig?
If it helps us keep moving, I will make a motion, but honestly, I wouldn't even know what the verbiage was, to be honest. So otherwise, we just keep moving.
Yeah, Andre.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we say that we were out of order and repeal the last motion and vote. And then I would make a second motion to approve the language as written. And if I had a second to that motion, then I could speak to what a game plan to move forward would be.
There'll be a reconsideration request. And you would
Yeah,
need first and second on that.
Yeah.
One at a time.
I second it. Second it.
Call the vote.
Who
Hey, all those in
seconded it
favor?
though?
Eric, I second
Eric,
it.
you voted against the motion to begin with. You can't second a reconsideration, I don't believe.
Oh, I thought he was gonna explain to me how that he was gonna handle it. So
That's
was-
what I thought.
Well, we rescinded the initial vote, so I'm pretty sure you can.
I am so confused.
Anyways. All right.
I think it would help if we do one motion at a time too.
Yeah, one motion at a time. Let's go.
So, okay, point of order is where we need to vote on rescinding the first motion.
Reconsideration. This is
Reconsideration.
Craig. I will vote to reconsider since I guess I'm a late positive. I make a motion to reconsider the previous vote
I
regarding the
second
ordinance.
that. I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, forward.
All right. So
Okay,
now if someone wants to do a motion regarding the duplex, then we can handle that one at a time.
I guess I would like to make the motion that we accept the wording as is. And if I get a second and I'm able to speak to that, I would line out how we would deal with a further amendment from there that we could vote on separately.
So point of order, if you make that motion, we're gonna be right back where we were, where we're requesting to approve the ordinance as is. If there's a change to the current verbiage, we should do an amendment to change the current verbiage. And otherwise, we'll be right back where we were.
I guess I'm kind of seeing it a little different than you, and I'll just give me 1 second to explain. I was gonna make a motion to approve as written, and then when speaking to the motion in favor of it, I would say, and I'm open to
Oh, okay.
any amendments to change this motion. And if we want to discuss changing to allow a homeowner to wire a duplex, then we can discuss that and vote on it as an amendment to the main motion.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. So yeah, so we have a motion to approve and then we go into discussion and we can amend at that point. Is that, Mr. Chair, kind of how I'm all wrapped around Robert's rules at this point in time.
I'm not a good rule enforcer, so. At this point, so, okay, so we don't have a vote on any of it. So really, we are still open for discussion at the end of the day, right?
Correct.
So if we want to discuss the duplex, why don't we look at that side of it and air that out and see, you know, if anybody, how everybody feels like the path of this would work. That's the biggest thing, is just how it goes. Eric?
I agree. I think the part that was, I just wanted to straighten out as much as we could is I don't like the thought of something being codified and then the muni has to do something else to accomplish what they want. So, you know, written as single family and that, but we allow duplexes. That just doesn't feel right to me. So does the municipality want to stay that way, or would they like to see us to attempt to clean it up, or would they like us to try to just change it to be duplex? I don't understand if there's any issues out there that I'm unaware of.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the municipality would be better off to be more in alignment with the state. And which basically means to leave the provision at allowance to wire a single family only and not a duplex.
Okay, I think I agree with that. If you guys are going to start enforcing it that way, that goes along with what I feel like's the right thing to do, because whenever you start allowing a duplex, it just starts slipping into triplex and they're not living in that unit. It seems not clean to me. So I think if I'm good with then leaving it that way. If you guys are going to enforce it that way, then it makes sense.
Through the chair, through the chair, I agree 100% with that. I think it should stay the way it is written.
Now you got my vote.
I would think that if the idea of exploring changing the electrical on the state level is something that this board wanted to do, we could put it on the agenda and move after this. I think that this point that Ross cleaned up is really a critical path to keeping unlicensed mechanical and electrical people from doing work on commercial buildings. That's the biggest thing that we need to close the gap on first. And us matching up with state law is going to be the easiest path to that. Making additional changes, I think, just delays us closing up this loophole.
Through the chair, the more I sit here and think about this, the more I think the state lawsuit or the Supreme Court ruling is on track, and it's what we should go with, because the complication you get to at a duplex for electrical is about 2x harder, 3x harder for a homeowner to understand how to wire and get it correct anyway. because of the shared load issues, house panels. There is so much there that I think that is the right way to go, and we should be enforcing probably that single-family homes are the limit of a homeowner doing it.
I agree, honestly, Eric. I mean, it's a big difference. It's not just
Yeah.
another house. It's,
Correct.
yeah. So, okay. Do we ready to vote?
I would make a second to somebody that can word something.
I will
Really?
make a motion to accept the assembly ordinance as written.
I second that.
All those in
Who did
favor?
the motion first?
Okay. Bryce did the motion.
Thank you.
Do we want to do a roll call on this?
Let's do that.
Okay. Mr. Straight? Mr.
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Mr. Cowling?
Yes.
Mr. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. McCann?
Yes.
Mr. Soboleski?
Yes.
Mr. Vanoy?
Yes.
Mr. Fulmer?
Yes.
Mr. Kunder?
Yes.
Mr. Hamels?
Yes.
And Mr. Spinell?
Yes.
You have approval.
Okay. Do we have a unanimous on that?
Yes.
All right. So we'll move on into the agenda. That one's done.
Mr. Chair, this is Craig.
Yep.
One request for staff is there was some confusion there, talking about those two attachments that were there.
Mhm.
And the one that says attachment current text to AMC subsection, blah, 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 to be repealed, which is not the draft verbiage. That document mentions nothing about electrical. So if that is going to be part of the assembly's packet, then request assembly or the staff add a section regarding electrical requirements.
That's the section that you're repealing, the one I was showing you. That's
Oh,
why
that's the
we're
verbiage to be
repealing it.
repealed.
Yeah. That's the problem is they don't
I
list anything.
apologize.
Yeah.
I apologize. My
Okay.
mistake.
Do we need an action item or anything, or how is this going to get to the assembly?
Through us.
Through
Okay.
staff.
Yeah.
Staff's got it?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Okay, let's move on to reports. Am I supposed to have the report?
Oh, you just ask staff if they have anything
Okay.
anything new came up.
Anything new, staff?
As you've seen the news coverage, probably the most significant thing we've been dealing with lately is that building collapse, the partial roof collapse or whatever on the, I guess it was the Turnigan CrossFit gym. And so, yeah, we've been digging into that. It's, they obviously, some of the stuff you've probably seen in the newspaper, they had like a very significant accumulation of ice over that portion of the building. I was able to find like a 1979 drawing of the drainage site drawing of the building that showed all the roof drainage for, what did they say, it was 35,000 square feet. All the roof drainage for that building flows from the south end to the north end. And then at the north end of the building, we know there was a roof drain over the Turnigan CrossFit space. And I'm sure there was another one, which was the northeast corner. And there's probably another roof drain over the northwest corner. And so here you go, you're shedding 35,000 square feet of roof area to one end of the building. And then it was a cold truss space. It was a ventilated cold space. So because it's such a huge voluminous space, you're gonna have like a mix of conditions going on at any given time, where you're gonna have melting probably in the interior, and then potentially refreezing as you get closer to the exterior, as the water flows along the roof and it gets to a colder portion of the roof. And I believe just the way the building was built and designed, and then it was probably exacerbated by the fact that that northeast corner of the building sunk a foot in the last earthquake, and they never re-leveled the building. That was likely why so much ice was able to accumulate over in that area of the building. And so we're guessing the ice was maybe around 80 pounds per square foot, measuring the thickness of the blocks. And but that in and of itself is not the whole answer. Some of the other things we're looking into considering is that the differential settlement of the building could have created tension forces in the roof trusses and where the roof trusses connect to the bearing walls. That may have been a significant factor. We're not sure whether or not the truss plate connections could have been under-designed. Just some of the things we're looking at on that. But it was obvious, it's pretty obvious though, it was a tremendous amount of weight accumulation that was, the determining factor of the failure. But there was, we think there's some pretty significant other things that played into that, likely.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
This is certainly a straight question for staff. As a follow-up, do you know, or has there been any intel on if that building was inspected for damage following the 2018 earthquake, and or if the structure had ever been retrofit for known seismic deficiencies of that kind of building?
Yeah, so there's before I go there, there's something really strange. So that building's a CMU exterior wall building, but almost the entire north wall of the building is stick built. And the stick built construction goes along the north wall and then turns southward on the east wall, back there where the gym was. And we're wondering, why did they randomly just change from CMU to wood? And it makes me wonder that maybe the building just didn't sink during the earthquake. Maybe the building sunk, 2-3 decades ago. And as a result of the differential settlement, they replaced the CMU wall with that wood framed wall. But during the earthquake, it reportedly, they said the slab inside sank 7 inches. We've got some foundation measurements that show that northeast corner of the building more like a foot lower than the majority of the building. The northwest corner of the building was about 4 inches lower. So there was clearly some sort of soil issue going on with this building. They did get it in 2021. They did get an earthquake repair permit, but the permit just consisted of pinning the foundation to stop further movement. They didn't re-level the building. And so, yeah, that really has us wondering at this point, like what kind of tension forces were in the roof trusses as a result of this building basically bending.
Thanks.
It's very sad. Everything actually lose somebody.
Yeah, it's tragic. I think this is, in my time at the building department, the first time that I'm aware of that someone's actually been killed by a building. We had a homeowner one time accidentally kill himself by he was excavating in his crawl space. He was kind of digging his crawl space out to be a basement, and he had this large slab in the crawl space that is like a housekeeping pad that maybe a water heater or something was sitting on, of concrete. And it was maybe about 8 inches thick, and it was pretty good size. And he was excavating underneath of it. And he excavated far enough underneath of it that the slab just rotated and pinned him.
Oh, wow.
And he lived in the house by himself, and nobody found him it was months before someone finally found him. But I think that's the only other fatality I'm aware of.
So this is gonna continue under investigation until in hopes that there's some conclusion?
Yeah, I think probably, so DCI Engineers is currently working for the owner and, you know, it's gonna be kind of a phase project, you know, it looks at this point, like the south side of the building is probably, it may be okay. I mean, they want to do some analysis before we open the building up and let them back in, but ideally, you know, we'll probably open that building back up in phases if we don't find anything, you know, like, seriously wrong with the roof trusses and the connection of the roof trusses to the bearing walls. And the north side of the buildings obviously needs to be rebuilt. So that's going to be a process that's going to go on for a while. But yeah, we're just trying to gather. This is going to be kind of a phase process too, because some shoring needs to be done to the north side of the building to make it safe enough that they can get up on the roof and get the snow off the roof and any ice or whatever. And so it's going to be kind of an iterative process of making the building safe and then investigate.
Okay. Any other topics for staff reports?
No.
Okay. Board member comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Sterling Straight. Just want to give a brief report on a discussion that occurred last week now with the Structural Engineering Association of Alaska. We had invited our members to come speak or come talk about the independent structural review ordinance that's out there. We're also joined by Assemblyman Ross, who is a sponsor, as well as Mr. Wayne Boland from the MOA. Had a very good conversation with the engineers, the sponsor, and the MOA on the topic. And the result was Mr. Cross said he was going to go back and do some more updates and come out with an S version in the near future. Just want to make everybody aware. There are a few other board members from this group that were also listening in. Want to make everybody aware that that's still kind of going on in the background. And at some point, I expect it to come back before us in a revised version.
Okay, great. But he'll probably just redraft that and won't just have a work session again.
I have no idea how the assembly does their thing, so can't speak to the nuts and bolts. Sorry.
All right, sounds good. Anybody else?
To the chair, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All right. We don't need to vote on that, do we? All right, everybody, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hour 20.
you know, the downtown area where they're not doing so hot in the burbs.